8 Indian Navy veterans who had their death sentence commuted to prison terms in Qatar have been released. The government had said that 7 of them have already been released and have arrived in India as well. This comes after an 18-month-long jail stay for them in the Middle East country. Sources tell us that officials, these officers and sailors have been released from custody in Qatar and did not have prior warning, in fact, of their release, and that they were taken away by embassy officials shortly after their release. Sources also say that the released veterans boarded an Indigo flight and returned to India at around 2 a.m. early this morning. The Ministry of External Affairs said, and I quote, "The Government of India welcomes the release of 8 Indian nationals working for the Dara Global Company who were detained in Qatar. 7 of the 8 of them have returned to India, and we appreciate the decision by the Emir of the State of Qatar to enable the release and homecoming of these nationals." The veterans, in fact, once they'd arrived in Delhi, also said that they think that this was possible only because of the intervention of the Prime Minister. Listening.
इस इंडिया पहुंच गए हम सेफ एंड साउंड और डेफिनेटली ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर श्री मोदी को धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे कि उनके पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन से ये पॉसिबल हुआ और गवर्नमेंट ऑफ कतार के हिज एक्सेलेंसी द अमीर को कि उन्होंने ये होने दिया एंड बस यही बोलना चाहेंगे. थैंक यू वेरी मच.
Without the intervention of Prime Minister Modi, it wouldn't be. आज हम आपके सामने खड़े नहीं हो रहे होते.
Very thankful to the government and Prime Minister Modi कि हम लोग बाहर आ सके और वापस अपने कंट्री में आ सके. Thank you so much.
प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी और उनका पर्सनल इंटरवेंशन, उनका इंटरेक्शन, और एक और मौका लेना चाहता हूं कि थैंक करूंगा एमीर को कतर के, जिनके उनके इंटरेक्शन के कारण आज हम यहाँ खड़े हैं.
It's only possible due to the intervention of our Prime Minister and his personal interaction and involvement with the Emir of Qatar.
We have waited almost 18 months to be back in India. We're extremely grateful to the Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi ji. It certainly wouldn't have been possible without his personal intervention and that equation with the Emir of Qatar.
I'm being joined by Captain Alok Bansal, Director of India Foundation, as well as former diplomat Ashok Sajanhar. Let me start with Captain Bansal. Thank you for joining us, sir. Now, first, a removal from death row and now their release. The journey has been a tough one for these veterans. And do you think now it is a win for diplomacy?
Undoubtedly, it's a big win for diplomacy because firstly, we need to understand that these people were working for a company called Dara Global, which had ventured into a field which had been the sole preserve of European nations. They were training Qatari Navy. They had set up their naval academy. I had the good fortune of visiting them. And then they were apprehended as part of a conspiracy, I personally believe, wherein the powers that be did not want Indians to venture in this field. But thereafter, considering the system of governance, system of judiciary that exists in Qatar, these people were sentenced to death, and from that they have come back. And that coming back has only been feasible because of personal intervention of Prime Minister Modi. When he met the Emir of Qatar for the first time, their death sentence was remitted. Right. And now, after the Qatar gas deal, I think these people have been released completely. So this is, I think, a big triumph of Indian diplomacy. We have been able to get our veterans back. They have really suffered a lot because they have been incarcerated for over 18 months. Some of them have gone through very trying times. 2 of them actually had their daughters married during this particular time when they were incarcerated. Right. The families were away. The families have undergone through a lot of anguish. And I think it's a very big step achieved due to persistent diplomacy by the Prime Minister, External Affairs Minister and the Ministry of External Affairs.
Absolutely. Ambassador Sajanhar, like Captain Bansal said, India has been relentlessly working for the release of these veterans. And these veterans believe that this was possible because of the personal interference of the Prime Minister. Do you agree with this?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think it was definitely the standing, the profile, the clout that the Prime Minister enjoys and the personal relations that he enjoys. And I think this is the latest in a string of successes and achievements that India has been able to achieve. You know, just very recently in September, we got a unanimous consensus New Delhi Leaders Declaration for the G20. It wouldn't have happened but for the very close and strong personal ties that Prime Minister Modi has with all the world leaders. And when they came here, all of them were determined that India's presidency has to succeed. And that is how they helped India to have this consensus declaration, and all the very many substantive issues also. We were able to get very significant results there. But coming back to this, release of our 8 Navy personnel there, Aarti, I think what is also needs to be noted is that all this diplomacy was conducted behind closed doors. It was not conducted through the media. Diplomacy through the media never helps. It never succeeds. It only frays tempers. So it was, backdoor channels. Whenever this issue was either raised in the parliament, and it was raised in the parliament many times, whenever it was, the official spokesperson for the Ministry of External Affairs, he was asked, he said, the Indian government is fully engaged. We are extending all support, assistance, help, and we are working towards, ensuring their safety and security. They didn't say anything. They didn't criticize who is wrong, who is right, what can be done, etc. Nothing through the media, but just patient diplomacy behind closed doors, through the back channels. And that is how diplomacy works, and it has worked beautifully in this case. So kudos to the Prime Minister, kudos to the External Affairs Minister, and to our diplomat negotiators who have got this result, literally got a new life for all these 8 decorated Navy personnel.
Right, Ambassador Sajanhar, now in such cases of being convicted in espionage and then being released, what is the procedure? Because our sources are telling us that the veterans were not informed before they were going to be released.
Yeah, I think different countries would have different systems, different processes in this, because you have to see that as far as the Middle Eastern countries are concerned, it is the Emir in this case. In the case of Oman, it is the Sultan. In the case of UAE, it's the President. The final authority rests with that individual, irrespective of what the laws are. They, in one person, they also have the responsibilities of the Prime Minister, of the Defense Minister, of the Finance Minister. Many of them do that. So they are really the final authority, irrespective of what the courts are doing. Of course, the courts will be allowed to do their work. So in this case here, you really have to go make a démarche right up to the highest echelons of power and authority. And that is, I think, what seems to have been done here, which has paid off.
Right. Captain Bansal, 18 long months in jail and terrifyingly on death row before that. Could this release have been fast-tracked?
I couldn't get you. Could this release have been?
Have been fast-tracked, sir. Could this have happened much earlier?
No, I think considering the system and considering the allegations that they had actually leveled against them, I think, to my mind, it was not possible. And I think Government of India has done phenomenally well, though I agree that the people have suffered for 18 months. I think maybe the mission there in Qatar could have done to ameliorate the sufferings. I think they were in solitary confinement for a very, very long period of time. It was only subsequent after the remission that they were allowed, they were put into a cell. You can imagine living for such a long period of time all alone and with no connection with the outside world, threat of death looming on you, the amount of toll that it would have taken psychologically on them. But as far as I think Government of India is concerned, I think they have done phenomenally well, because this was a sensitive matter. Our enemies had managed to concoct a story that was very serious. They were accused of espionage without any credible evidence. But in these countries, the system of evidence, etc., is not as it exists in countries like India or other developed nations. Their hearsay evidence and a lot of perceptional views also carry a lot of weight. And I think that's why these people were on the death row. They had been convicted of that. I think I don't personally feel that any of them were indulging in acts of espionage.
Right. Thank you, Captain Bansal and Ambassador Sajanhar, for joining us and sharing your thoughts on this development.